I really like the Circles team, and I like the way that they talk and the way that they think about Circles as a currency that might help us build towards a basic income. Unlike a lot of cryptocurrencies, it's not, you can't really speculate on it. You can't really make money from it. It's not an investment vehicle. It's really more like a local economic trading system, or what they used to call LETs, like a local currency, except it can be traded globally. It has a really weird and interesting technological architecture, but I think maybe the most significant thing about it, other than the fact that it's built to facilitate local exchanges, is that it provides every consistent user with, I think, 240 circles a month. So the idea is that, like, we as a community and an economy are providing ourselves with a basic income rather than waiting for the government to give us a basic income. I think it's a really interesting experiment. I'm generally in favor of economic and monetary experiments. I'm also generally in favor of rebuilding a non-capitalist economy from the bottom up, rather than saying, like, okay, well, the government needs to change a bunch of things and then things will be better. To say, like, actually, we produce value together, and we can find ways to exchange that value that doesn't require mediation of capitalist markets or some sort of nation-state planned economy. So I really like that about the Circles experiment, and I really like that the Circles has put resources towards hiring community organizers who actually go out into the community, teach people how to use the system, encourage them to sell the things that they make or exchange it with Circles. And so it's being used as a form of, like, community building. Mm-hmm. So I really like all of those things about it. I generally believe that a basic income's not a bad idea. I'm not sure it solves every problem, but it's a good one for now, especially. There's a lot of debates around whether it is a good thing or not. I tend to fall on the side that I think it liberates people to do more and to contribute more. That all said, I'm also a bit skeptical that it can level up to be more than an interesting experiment. I think there's some technological limitations to that. The question of, like, are we going to live on a planet where we all have disposable smartphones? Like, that is ecologically destructive. And
disposable smartphones?
Yeah, like, all smartphones are disposable. They're only meant to last, like, 16 months. They're built with planned obsolescence. So, like, we do our Circles exchange mostly on smartphones, but we're building an economy based on an infrastructure of exploitation, then, unless we're all going to build our own smartphones.
Okay, you're talking about it's just the thing that we're using to interact with all of these things? Okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it in a kind of holistic sense, like all of the things that need to go into building it. You know, like other LETS systems, local economic trading systems, they just, like, print, like, moose bucks on paper.
You're comparing it to, let's say, a paper system or something that doesn't involve specifically smartphones. Yeah.
Or, like, even like a dumb ledger. Like, you know, you have, like, there's smart ledgers, right? But, like, you can have a local economic trading system that's basically just like somebody walking around with a literal ledger, right? Like, writing notes in it. And whole communities have run like that for decades. Yeah. You don't necessarily need a distributed ledger to have a ledger that credits people's debts and credits.
Yeah.
You know, the whole 18th and 19th century global capitalism ran on ledger books. So it's like you can manage a pretty complex system with a book and a pen. So, okay, all of that aside, I think then there's those technological limitations and the and then the kind of substrate on which that's built, the technological and material substrate. That's one side of it. The other side is just that, like, it's like the problem that I see with it as a scheme is, like, let's just imagine, for the sake of argument, that here in Berlin, like, 50% of the population started using Circles for all sorts of regular transactions, which is, like, beyond everyone's wildest dreams. You know, 50% of the population, I don't know how many people live here now, 5 million, so it's 2.5 million people are using it all the time. What are we exchanging with those Circles? We're mostly exchanging our time. So, like, I will sell an hour of copy editing labor to you, you'll sell an hour of audio editing labor to me. We're going to do it in Circles rather than in euros. So we have our time, we have what we can produce with our bodies. And we also might exchange sort of things that we build And then we might also exchange things that we've bought with euros from the global economy. But even if we think about 50%, a random cross-section of 50% of the Berlin population, that 50% probably only holds between 5 to 10% of all the resources in this city, because the resources are also vastly disproportionately held by large institutions or corporations. So like here we can pay our rent, so-called, in circles, but that's not going to work with Deutsche Wohnung, the biggest landlord, right? They're not going to do that, and they have the resources and power. You know, we might be able to pay for like rent a bike from someone else in Moss with our circles, but we can't necessarily rent a bike, you know, or we can't use it for public transit yet, because the public transit system is run by a large state organization. So in order to actually build out something that would allow us to sustain life together in a space the size of Berlin, we would need to either convince large institutions to be part of the circle's economy, which comes with a lot of risks, because especially competitive institutions like corporations are going to try and manipulate it for their profit. Or, and I think this is both more likely and more important, we need to also expropriate the resources from other institutions. Like, we need to take all the housing back and put it into public or commons ownership. You know, we need to have political social movements that would have the power to say, like, we're only paying for public transit in circles, and you have to accept that or not. Like, because and you know, if you need to buy a mattress, right? Nobody in the community is like building mattresses out of foam for circles. We need to actually take back the means, what like in the old school times we used to call like means of production. Because otherwise it's basically like we circles users are just circulating among ourselves the kind of dregs of a capitalist system, the things that we've managed to accumulate in that system, and our own labor, rather than exchanging the whole bounty of the world that we should have access to. And most of us are still putting most of our time and labor and energy towards earning euros in a formal exploitative economy. That's where I see the big limit of circles, and maybe circles could lead to the kind of social movements that would demand the expropriation of housing, demand that the workshops and factories go back into the hands of the workers who use circles, demand reglobalization in a new way. But it's a big ask. It's a big challenge. Let's go back to the housing. Just simply, like, we could all exchange like a lot of things that we need on circles, but at a certain point, most of the landlords in Berlin are not going to accept circles because they have no incentive to do so. They're mostly large corporations with shareholders around the world who want to earn euros. They want to earn euros by charging rent. We might be able to convince a handful of those landlords to accept circles basically as a form of charity. The ones who would do it would be sort of like, oh, well, that's kind of cute. Like, sure, I'll accept your made-up money. Cool, whatever. And maybe a couple of those landlords even will be like, I really believe we need a new non-capitalist economy, and I'm going to accept circles out of my belief in that. The vast majority, like 90 to 95%, aren't. So we're all still going to be in a position where we need to continue to earn euros in order to pay our rent. But that means that we all have to dedicate 20 to 40 hours a week of labor towards earning the euros to pay the rent. And the rent keeps on going up because it's part of a speculative real estate market. So the challenge for circles is, like, if we're truly going to use it to exit this exploitative capitalist economy and build another parallel economy beside it, we can't just be satisfied to, exchange my kombucha for your audio editing labor. Like, that's cool, but we don't actually need circles necessarily to do that. We could just barter. We could just barter. What we really need circles for is managing a complex economy, but that needs to include the most important parts of the economy, which is not kombucha and audio editing. It's things like housing, food, the necessities of life, the tools that we use in order to do our work and work together, public infrastructure. Transportation. Yeah. And as long as those things are sequestered within the capitalist economy, no matter how much we do in the circles economy, we're all going to be forced to continue to participate in the capitalist economy. We're never going to actually get to that horizon of a basic income, which we want, which is to say, like, we would like to live in a world where we didn't have to engage with kind of capitalist currencies and capitalist economies at all. I would rather dedicate, like as a professor, I would rather just teach classes for circles and then use my circles to pay for my rent, to get my groceries and go on the train and go on a vacation and, do all the sorts of things that I'd buy a smartphone. But that's not really going to happen unless, well, it's very unlikely to happen. So somehow, for the dream of circles to work, which is also my dream in some way, that we could use it to exit a capitalist economy, we also need to collectively reclaim some of the wealth that right now has been essentially stolen or is sequestered by capitalist institutions and corporations. That requires something a little more feisty than just, let's get together every once in a while and make exchanges. I think everyone involved in circles knows this as well. I don't think it's like we talk about it. It's not a secret, but it does present a bit of a threshold in the horizon. I think the view is that, like, if you can get people to start using circles, they realize that it reconnects us, that it's disalienating. Like, we meet the people that we're exchanging with. Yeah. We have a meaningful, and that allows us to build a solidarity that then we could use to make more radical demands. But getting from like trading kombucha for audio editing labor to repossessing all of the assets of Siemens, this huge German corporation that produces a bunch of stuff we need all the time, from appliances to chemicals to all sorts of, like that. There's a big gulf between those things.